everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the Linglobe channel. This time, we'll be bringing you content about preserving the world's languages for the future. Please enjoy it to the end.
Imagine memorizing a family tree that is, maybe 1,000 names long.
Right, and doing that while simultaneously performing a really rigorous, physically exhausting dance.
Exactly. Knowing that just a single mispronounced syllable could mean, well, basically failing a sacred test. Linglove voicefa.
It's intense, right? It really is a completely different paradigm for understanding human achievement.
Yeah, it really is. Today, we are looking at a culture that didn't build its history in stone. They built it in muscle memory, ocean currents, and an 8-consonant language.
We're examining a civilization that didn't just passively survive in isolation. They engineered this highly sophisticated, interconnected society spanning 15 centuries.
Right. So looking at the Linglove Arant, our mission today is to explore the origins, the rich culture, and the enduring legacy of Hawaii's first people.
It's a huge topic.
It is. I'm looking at our first slide title, which really frames this perfectly. It's titled Native Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, A Journey of Ocean, Land, and Story.
That sums it up beautifully.
Yeah, and we need to keep the introduction to this first slide brief because we have a massive 1,500-year journey to cover today. And it starts not on the land, but out in the deep water.
Right, because to truly grasp the Kanaka Maoli, you have to fundamentally shift your perspective on geography.
How so?
Well, their story requires recognizing that they mastered an entire ocean long before they developed their complex island societies.
So the ocean wasn't a boundary for them?
Exactly. It was their primary theater of operations.
Which means we really have to map out their physical world first to understand how they operated. I'll pull up the next slide. The title for our second slide is The Archipelagic Home.
And the visual here completely reframes how you look at a map of the Pacific.
It really does. You have the geographical chain of the islands stretching from Kauai in the northwest right down to the big island of Hawaii in the southeast.
But it's those intricate, dotted connection lines extending outwards that are so fascinating.
Yeah, they reach all the way toward California and Nevada and then stretch deep down into the South Pacific to New Zealand and Tahiti. I mean, I always pictured the Pacific Ocean as this giant moat isolating these islands.
That's how Western history traditionally viewed it,
Yeah.
Like a massive, insurmountable barrier of water keeping people trapped.
But looking at these connection lines, it's like the Kanaka Maoli basically treated the Pacific Ocean as a massive, ancient superhighway.
That superhighway analogy is precisely how it functioned mechanically. I mean, they weren't just drifting and hoping for the best.
Yeah, definitely not.
They were reading the celestial sphere, memorizing the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars.
Hundreds. Oh, wow.
Yeah, hundreds. And they were analyzing the refraction of ocean swells bouncing off unseen land masses hundreds of miles away.
That is just incredible.
It is. Plus tracking the specific migratory flight patterns of birds. And that combination is crucial. You have extreme geographic isolation, but it's paired with master oceanic navigation.
So they stayed connected, but the isolation forced them to evolve a distinct identity.
Precisely. It birthed a completely unique cultural habitat.
So let's look at the specific environment they evolved in once they parked their canoes.
Yeah.
Our third slide title is The 4 Pillars of the Habitat.
This outlines the distinct personalities of the 4 main islands.
Right. It breaks down Hawaii, the big island, as the spiritual and cultural hub. It specifically notes it as the home of the volcano goddess Pele.
It's a very active landscape, literally land still being formed by fire today.
Yeah, raw energy. Then you have Maui, which is tied to epic legends, like the demigod Maui physically pulling the islands up from the sea.
And the topography of Maui, with those plunging valleys and soaring volcanic peaks, naturally dictates a certain mythological scale.
That makes total sense.
Right, when your daily reality involves massive calderas, your cultural storytelling scales up to match that verticality.
Then there's Oahu, acting as the vibrant heart. It features the largest population, the capital city of Honolulu, and the University of Hawaii.
It's the bustling center.
And finally, sitting at the far northwestern end, is Kauai, described here as the ancient mythic isle.
Because it's the oldest physically, it's heavily weathered and deeply rich in ancient sites and mythology. But we shouldn't evaluate these just as distinct geographical locations.
They function together.
Exactly. Ecologically and psychologically, they function as an integrated system. Each island plays a specific role in the cultural consciousness of the Kanaka Maoli. They form a complete habitat for a civilization to anchor itself.
And that habitat is the stage for a massive historical arc. Let's move to the next slide. The title of our fourth slide is An Epic 1500-Year Timeline.
Plotting this out against a backdrop of a starry night sky makes perfect sense for a navigating people.
It really does. It traces the timeline's arc, beginning over 15 centuries ago, with voyagers arriving by canoe from the Marquesas and Tahiti.
Then it moves into the development of complex chiefdoms and rich oral traditions.
Right. And by the late 18th century, we see the unification of the islands into a single kingdom under King Kamehameha I.
But then, almost immediately in historical terms, we hit the years 1893 to 1898.
Yeah, the slide labels this period upheaval.
That period covers the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy, which was subsequently followed by U.S. annexation.
And finally, it highlights today's ongoing movements for cultural restoration and sovereignty. Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Sure.
1,500 years is a massive span, and it has this intense, regime-changing upheaval right at the end.
It's a huge systemic shock.
Right. So how does a culture maintain its core identity through an overthrow and annexation? Like, how does it not just vanish?
It forces us to look at what actually sustains a society. As impartial observers looking at these historical materials, we can see that the mechanics of their cultural continuity didn't rely on formal political institution.
It wasn't about palaces or governments?
No, their identity was anchored in an ancestral connection to the land itself, the Aina. Governments change, flags change, but the genealogies they chanted from memory remained intact.
So the culture survived because the archive was stored within the people.
Exactly. In the people and their literal relationship to the soil and water, not within an administrative building that could be taken over.
So that unshakable resilience is built into their daily habits, which leads directly into how they experience the world sonically. The title of our fifth slide is The Rhythm of the Islands.
This really maps out the cultural soundscape.
Yeah, we see the iconic ukulele, the intricate melodies of the slack key guitar, and the traditional songs known as mele.
And it highlights the lei, too.
Right, the floral garlands. It explicitly frames them not as decorations, but as profound symbols of welcome, honor, and deep affection.
The sonic element is critical here, though. The mele wasn't just background music.
Okay.
Because they were an oral culture for the vast majority of their history, rhythm and melody function as their filing system.
Like a database.
Yeah, a chant held the data for seasonal wind patterns, navigational routes, and centuries of family lineages. Rhythm physically helps the human brain encode and retain vast amounts of critical survival data.
Which brings up an interesting question. What happens when that intense survival mechanism meets human recreation? That brings us to our sixth slide. The title is Play and Competition.
And looking at the mechanics of these games, that title almost feels, well, too casual for what they were actually doing.
Yeah, totally. First, the slide details Enalu, or surfing. It notes this was once reserved exclusively for chiefs.
Right. The dividing line between a recreational game and a sacred ritual was essentially non-existent for them.
This wasn't just catching a wave. It's described as a deeply spiritual practice, communing with the raw kinetic energy of the ocean.
Incredible.
Then there's Ulu Maika, a stone disc rolling game akin to bowling, but requiring extreme precision. And Kanene, a highly strategic board game that looks a bit like checkers.
Kanane is fascinating because it functions like a complex tactical simulator. It's intellectual warfare, training the mind to anticipate an opponent's moves multiple steps ahead.
And then the slide highlights Hopia and Hula challenges. The materials describe these as improvised dance, chant, and percussion competitions featured in rigorous ceremonies.
What's fascinating here is that these weren't mere pastimes.
Right, they were downloading centuries of data into muscle memory because paper would rot in the humidity.
Exactly. And the physical and mental toll of those hula challenges was immense. Performers had to recall complex historical chants perfectly while executing physically exhausting movements.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah, it tested human endurance limits. Play was elevated to a sacred level. It was a rigorous audit of a person's physical capability and their mastery of the historical archive.
So when you combine that level of discipline with their physical environment, you get very distinct visual and linguistic markers. Let's examine how that identity is coded today. The title of our 7th slide is Flags and Emblems of the Maoli.
This visual comparison is just striking.
It really is. You have the Kanaka Maoli flag, the unofficial indigenous flag. It features the royal staff, the kahili, right in the center.
Set against the green, red, and yellow stripes.
Right, and directly contrasting it is the state flag of Hawaii, which incorporates the British Union Jack in the corner alongside red, white, and blue stripes.
The contrast perfectly encapsulates the complex dual identity of modern Hawaiians.
How so?
While the state flag is a direct reflection of post-contact history and foreign diplomatic relationships. Meanwhile, the indigenous flag honors their ancestral roots and royal pre-contact heritage. They're navigating a post-contact reality while anchored to their sovereignty.
That makes sense. The slide also catalogs other vital cultural symbols like voyaging canoes, intricate geometric patterns on kapa bark cloth, and native koa trees.
And it emphasizes crucial linguistic marks, right?
Yeah, the okina and the kahaku.
Highlighting the punctuation is a very deliberate choice in the materials. The okina is a glottal stop, a literal pause in the breath. And the kahaku is a macron that lengthens a vowel sound.
So they aren't just arbitrary grammar rules.
No, they dictate the physical rhythm of how a speaker exhales. They fundamentally alter the meaning of a word. To understand the Kanaka Maoli, you have to understand the literal shape of their words.
Let's trace where the shape of those words actually came from then. Our 8th slide title is The Origins of Olelo, Hawaii.
This presents a massive linguistic family tree.
Yeah, looking at the data here, you see this sprawling network rooted at the bottom in the Austronesian family. From there, it coalesces into a common Polynesian ancestor trunk.
And then branches out.
Right. Across the Pacific into Samoan, Tahitian, Maori, and finally Hawaiian.
What you're looking at is basically a vocal map of human migration. Linguists track the physical journey of these voyagers over thousands of miles by mapping the slow mutation of their vocabulary.
And because Hawaii was the final, most remote destination, their branch had centuries of deep isolation to evolve uniquely.
Exactly, distilling into something entirely distinct while still retaining shared vocabulary with its ancient Austronesian roots.
And that distillation process created something mathematically fascinating. I'll pull up the next slide. Our 9th slide title is The Geometry of the Hawaiian Voice.
The structural mechanics here are incredibly compact.
Yeah, it features only 5 vowels and 8 consonants. That is a tiny toolkit to build an entire civilization's vocabulary.
But so efficient.
And the slide highlights words that show how deeply tethered they are to nature. Wei for water, lani for heaven or sky, kai for the ocean, aina for the land, and manu for bird.
You know, the mathematical compactness of having only 8 consonants means the language is inherently melodic.
Because it forces a continuous flow of breath.
Right, without the harsh, breath-stopping consonant clusters you find in many other languages. It's acoustically engineered to project clearly.
Oh, which is a functional necessity when communicating over the ambient noise of ocean surf and high trade winds.
Precisely. Furthermore, having an incredibly dense vocabulary for specific states of water or variations in the wind proves that their worldview is fundamentally inseparable from their environment.
Okay, so up to this point, the materials have painted a logical picture of an oral tradition perfectly tuned to their environment. But this next piece of evidence completely throws a wrench into everything I thought I knew. I'm bringing up our 10th slide. The title is Transmission of the Written Word.
This is perhaps the most paradigm-shifting detail in the entire stack of sources.
Wait, I have to stop and scrutinize this. This slide notes the historical use of the ancient Tifinagh script in Hawaii, explicitly tracing its origins back to Phoenician influence.
Is unexpected.
It says this script utilized distinct angular and dotted symbols and was traditionally carved or painted into physical materials like kapa cloth.
And traditionally transmitted by women.
Right, and is now promoted through modern digital fonts. But here's where it gets really interesting. Phoenician influence and Tifinagh script appearing in Hawaii, that completely subverts what we normally assume about Polynesian isolation.
I completely agree. This detail forces us to question our assumptions about historical transmission.
Like, how does a script from North Africa end up sewn into bark cloth in the Pacific?
If we evaluate the evidence presented here, it points to a surprisingly complex layer of written communication. This wasn't ink on paper, it was tactile data, physically stitched into their clothing.
It means they were literally wearing their texts.
Exactly. And the fact that this specific textual transmission was managed, curated, and safeguarded by women adds a vital dimension to our understanding of their society.
It blends ancient global influences with indigenous practices.
It proves that their methods for preserving knowledge were far wider and far more complex than conventional history has credited them for.
It just goes to show that whenever we try to label a civilization as isolated, the actual evidence reveals an incredibly sophisticated reality. Well, we're at our final slide, which brings the journey to a close. The title of slide 11 is Rooted in Ocean, Land, and Story.
This really summarizes our core thesis today.
Yeah, that Native Hawaiians express their history through dance, their prayers through chants, and their very identity through their language. They completely integrated with these islands.
And if we connect this deep integration to the bigger picture, considering how fundamentally the Kanaka Maoli identity is entwined with the physical elements of Wei, the water, and Aina, the land,
Yeah.
one has to wonder how this profound ancestral resilience will adapt their culture to the rapidly changing global climates and rising seas of the modern era.
Ours of easy.
Thank you for watching until the end. We will continue to bring you many more languages from around the world. Please subscribe to our channel. See you next time on the Ling Globe channel.